Welcome back to the Lore and Valor podcast. We are back with my Arcane crew after kind of a hiatus. Sorry, day job just got crazy, and there's been quite a few life transitions around the board. I know, Kacey, you started your new job, medical air ambulance, right? So that's awesome, exciting, very very happy for you. You're still flying rotary wing on the outside as well as having time to write. So I'm joined once again by Kacey Azell, Air Force veteran now. And helicopter pilot, as well as author of science fiction, fantasy, alternate history, and secret history. Joelle Presby, U.S. Navy veteran and author of the upcoming hard science fiction novel, the Dabare Snake Launcher. Sorry, we had a hilarious conversation before this, guys. I'm going to be stuttering a little bit while I get my bearings. And Brian Urbanek, developer extraordinaire, gaming expert, and the only one of us who has actually played League of Legends. So he's qualified. I also would note that Joelle is very kind to join us from Witness Protection. I'm really grateful for making this cast, even though her whereabouts are now redacted. So we're going into the final act of Arcane, and I know we've all been gushing throughout this whole series because it is, I've said multiple times now, my favorite thing to hit either large or small screen in at least a couple years. But we're going into the last act, and I'm going to kind of open it up as I usually do on these for freeform conversations. Who wants to lead off with, for these last couple episodes, what really hit you hard, and what's the first thing you kind of want to hit on?
Okay, I have one.
Go ahead, Kacey. I knew you'd save me.
So this is sort of like overall thematic, but I realized that especially the last 3 episodes really crystallized for me how much I love when a writer or writers, or storyteller, I guess I should say, because the visuals are a big part of it too, make me root for the bad guy. When they can make the villain sympathetic enough and just really like etch into the bone that idea of every villain is the hero of their own story, and that's something that like I play with in my own fiction quite a bit. I mean, I wrote an entire book where the protagonist is the antagonist of the previous volume in the series, right?
It's
and
a good
also
book too.
more Nazi.
Yeah.
Thank you. So one of the things I was really, really trying to do was to take this person with this history of evil. I mean, she was a Nazi, right? And make her a sympathetic character for real, right? Not just be like, oh, she's all good now. Sunshine and rainbows flowing out of her orifices. No, none of that, right? Like
she never meant it.
Yeah. And that's what I see here in Arcane, right? That like the character of Civica, for example, she's still like a terrible person, but she's a badass, right?
Yeah.
And she's loyal.
Yeah, that really surprised me.
I know, it was so dramatic and so well done. Just the timing of it. The thing that hit me the most about specifically episode 9 was how dead on the timing was to make all of these points that I'm making about, this guy's a bad dude, but he's got his reasons. He's sympathetic, right? This chick, she's a bad woman. She's a bad lady, but she's got her reasons. And she's got sympathetic traits. She's got admirable traits to her.
Well, and I love when Silco, that it is, we've talked about in previous episodes how, he's had power in Zon for a long time now and things aren't better for the common man. But that on a certain level, he is drinking his own Kool-Aid, like it's not all cynical. And I do love when he's facing down Trapjaw. I'm not gonna learn his name. He's Trapjaw, as far as I'm concerned. When he's facing down Trapjaw, and the lieutenant whose son died in Jace's raid on the factory, and he's still calm and collected, and 2, when Trapjaw says, "This is the day you die," and he says, that's that's something I've always faced, but I still believe in loyalty.
Yep.
And his lieutenant comes through for him, and you can see I love that the animation betrays his loss of that he was worried. He didn't know for sure. And he has to ask her if she was tempted, and she's like, not for a worm like him.
Right.
But I love it's subtext, not for a worm like him, but you have been fucking up.
Yeah.
I love that. Yep.
Well, and her next line is something like, there will be more, or there are more every day, or something like that, Yeah.
Brian, you look like you had something.
Many thoughts, but they're kind of bigger topic. So I'm less about character. I'm more about the world.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm very glad you guys finally got to see with episode 8 and 9, and that I'm looking forward to seeing expounded, is exactly what Kacey's talking about on a world building level.
Yeah.
So where Mel's family comes from, Noxus.
Thank you. I want to talk about that a lot.
So the game's lore has gone through many evolutions as the game got bigger and they brought in more writers and they started taking themselves more seriously. Originally, Noxus was absolutely stereotypical big evil dir, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were just the warmongers and they were completely one-dimensional. And then the writers start saying, well, let's play with it a little bit. Let's take the nation, which was supposed to be all knights and gallantry, and give them a dark side.
Mm-hmm.
And they started to twist Noxus into having a nobility. So no, they're doing the lore recently is Noxus is, yes, they're conquerors, but they've been conquering tyrants and installing like enfolding the new conquered nations into their own and elevating the people to positions of authority. Right?
That sounds
like
really familiar.
Yeah, maybe it should. But there's a lot of layers going on there, and they are legitimately deposing really awful people. And there are a lot of internal conflicts around that, and that's what leads into Mel and Mel's mother and that scene.
Yeah.
Oh, let's talk about that for a second, because Mel Madara is maybe my favorite character in this amazing series with so many amazing characters. That tension, because even like her mother is by any normal standard of villain, right? Kills a kid in front of us.
Yep.
Not even off screen. There's no filter.
Yep.
And then
a lesson for her child kills a kid.
Yes.
Yep.
And
no remorse, no regret, not in the heat of battle.
Yeah.
It's an execution.
It's an execution. And yet, I'm not saying I agree with her, but when she makes her argument, I kill her now, or potentially I fight another war that costs more. And we all know, either secondhand or personally, war doesn't just kill soldiers. It's never limited to combatants. You're killing more kids when you allow the possibility for more expanded wars. Now, I think it's actually fairly easy to poke into Mel's mom's hypocrisy, because you're like, yeah, but you're engaging in the wars of conquest, ergo you are going to start more wars. So your piety in this decision is extremely suspect.
Right.
And just like Silco, it's like, you talk about your ideology, but when given the chance to act on it, when you are in a position of power, it doesn't seem you really do much with it.
Right.
But still very compelling, and I think makes Mel a much more flagrantly sympathetic character, because the show's done such a good job walking the line of how Machiavellian is she, then to realize what she comes from and the decision she's made against that. Makes her so much richer. And you're right, Brian, without the world, this is where I don't know if everyone's familiar with Orson Scott Card's mice quotient. Again, it's a real thing. I'm not just making it up. So it's the idea of, specifically for science fiction and fantasy stories, which Arcane clearly is, you basically have 5 factors that make it compelling, right? You have the milieu, the idea behind it. Now, a lot of golden age science fiction was the idea, right? Like especially Asimov, but even Heinlein's Lifeline, the first short story ever published about Dr. Pinero, it was an idea story. What if somebody actually could measure human lifespan ahead of time? Like what if you could, through geometry and other, higher math, figure out how long someone will live? What are the implications of that? So that's MIC for character. MICKEY. No, MIC. C for characters. That one's fairly compelling. Do you like the people you're reading about, or at least are you fascinated by them, even if you don't like them? And then events, plot driven. Is it exciting enough? Right. So I would say that Arcane hits character and milieu really hard, and ties them together extremely well. Joelle, what are you laughing about?
Geometry is higher math.
Geometry is higher math.
I said and higher math.
Okay. Sure.
And conjunction. In space.
I know this is showing.
Thinking about things we've talked about previously, what you said about how it casts light on Mel. Now roll it back around to how Mel's been dealing with Jace. Right? We think about how Mel was taught by her mom, and now Mel, in her eye at least, is attempting to train Jace. How does that play out?
Absolutely. And that
it just makes her look like so much more sympathetic.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that the male viewers were going to think that she was very attractive and all of that, and she is.
Sure.
But I suspect some of the female viewers were more along my lines of looking at her suspect, because it seemed like she was just using her body to control Jace, who's very hot, leading him astray. But then, okay, her mom, knowing that Jace and her daughter are together, is willing to stand up out of the bathtub right in front of him. I'm like, who does that to your kind of sort of son-in-law? What?
Narcissists do that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also, I mean, my goodness, you have a lot of confidence in your body. Your daughter is a lot younger than you.
Yeah.
She has a lot of confidence in her ability to kill anybody who mocks her.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, she also is a very attractively drawn character, but wow.
There's some interesting symmetry, going back to what you were talking about, Justin, with, the scene of Mel's mom executing the little girl, and her justification for it is this will prevent more bloodshed. And since we're talking about all three at first, no spoilers. Yeah. At the end, near the end of episode 9, the final, kind of confrontation between Jace and Silco, Jace offers a peace with basically every term that Silco is requiring, right? But he has to give up Jinx. He has to give up his daughter.
I hate to cut you off, Kacey, but I kind of feel like that's the climax of the episode when we talk about that. Once we talk about that,
so you don't want to talk about that anymore.
Yeah, well, I want to, but I feel like that is the best thing about the show.
It's he's having this crisis because he killed a kid, just one.
Right? Yeah, Jace is. Yeah.
When the kid was a child soldier, was being part of the war effort in the role that an adult would.
It's the equivalent of the in Vietnam or Iraq or Afghanistan or any other place we've been, a kid approaching you with a hand grenade.
Yep.
Do you engage them? But do you engage them before they reach your position? The correct answer is probably yes, but God, I'm glad I never had to live with that decision. Right. And now Jace has to.
Yeah. Well, and he didn't know it was a kid when he killed it.
True.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. True.
Okay. All right. So we can talk about that symmetry later. There's another piece of symmetry I want to point out.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh shit! I just forgot what it was. Hang on. What were we talking about?
Oh, nice.
Naked mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Go to jail.
Joelle, did I cut you off earlier by any chance?
Oh, it was Silco. Okay, so
No,
again, in the confrontation with Trapjaw, and the woman, the other lieutenant who ended up being that little boy's mom, I thought it was very interesting. Again, because I see like this as evidence of Silco's humanity, cloaked in his sort of veneer of sociopathy, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Because he just executed Trapjaw, and he asked the woman, "Are you with him?" And she said yes. And she has zero consequences for that, except that he says, I would kill your son for this, so I guess we're ahead.
Which is really fucked up.
Which is fucked up, but it's also a way of saying, look, I owe you this because I got your son killed. And I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know?
You're not wrong. Yeah, Silco's character is so, because I
freaking love his character, man. I love his character.
Yeah, and there's a reason, because I had seen the whole thing before we started when I was asking you both pointed questions. It's like, oh, does he come across as a little bit of a two-dimensional mustache twirling villain in the first episode? Huh. Yeah.
Does he know?
Because you're kind of gonna love the bastard by the end of it.
Yeah.
Or at least I do.
And it's a very skilled piece of character development too, to introduce the character as a two-dimensional cutout, and then begin to slowly show, like, just to twist it so that you can see, oh, there's a facet here, oh, there's a facet here, oh, there's a facet here. It's very, very sophisticated, very skillfully done. And Silco isn't the only one that they do that to. Again, Savika is a perfect example. She is a nothing character. She's a total side piece, right? Yeah. And yet,
I'm sorry, a what?
Side piece. Yeah, I said what I said. So, and yet, you know, we get to see her develop, not her develop in terms of like her growth, but we get to see that, oh, there's more to her. There are more sides to her, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree completely. Like, no one, like, if people get dialogue, they don't remain two-dimensional. Almost.
Right. Yeah. Even people who are barely on the screen, like what's her name's mom? The hot chick,
Caitlin's mom.
That does not narrow it down in the show.
What's that?
The hot chick.
That does not narrow it down in the show.
Well, I was quoting Vi, but
Cupcake, yeah.
Cupcake, yes. Yeah. Her mom is barely on, but we get to see multiple facets of her as well.
Go ahead, Brad.
Oh, I was agreeing when she broke in with a rifle, and then we get to see later on she's the one who's being really intense, while as the father has the surgical kit out and is stitching up Caitlin's wounds. Just that's a little character.
I'm trying to make peace between mother and daughter. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that was super cool. Like, I do agree. I love when she just kicks down the door and has a gun ready. That was pretty slick.
I mean, Caitlin had to learn from somebody.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I also I did like just a little bit of craft thing. I did like the Hitchcockian element of, like, you could think of it as just prurience, but like with Caitlin in the shower when Jinx is about to abduct her, like that felt very Hitchcocked. It didn't feel like they were trying to just randomly appeal to my demographic. It felt fairly Hitchcock to me.
Yeah. Because it taps into that idea of when are you most vulnerable, you know?
Yeah. And I do like, gosh, there's so much. A couple minor notes, just because I know we're going to get into the momentum and I don't want to stop anyone again once we get into the really meat of it. But the one thing, it's not really a criticism, but I thought it was kind of interesting how Echo and Heimerdinger kind of hit it off so quickly. And I'm like, on one hand, cool. On the other hand, I'm like, Echo didn't like Caitlin at first. Heimerdinger is like the symbol of this city that he resents. So he seems awfully accepting of like the head dude who was propping up this whole system. Go ahead, Brad.
Heimerdinger was never, he was on the council, but he was never really involved in the politics. He was the head of the university. He was the one who brought the science that Echo has fully embraced into this.
But
Echo sees him as brilliant scientist, mentor, teacher person.
Within the show, he is established as having been on the council for a really long time.
But his role was at the university, right? He like when all the wheeling and dealing was happening at the opera, he wasn't wheeling and dealing. He was listening to the opera.
Yeah, but why would someone know that?
Yeah, I think it seems to me, I'm kind of with Joelle and Justin on this one. It seems to me that, like, you know, a street kid's gonna view anybody, particularly someone with that much privilege in their life, that they don't even have to notice, that they can just focus on the pure science, with suspicion.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, it's not a huge criticism. It's just, and it's cool to see the fireflies and everything, and it's a good hopeful moment.
Yeah.
In a pretty rough finale. So I think it's necessary.
That, based on everything else that has happened in season 1, I thought season 2 is going to explain why this makes sense, because it doesn't make sense now.
Okay. And another one, I don't want to call it minor, but Victor, man.
Whew.
Yeah. That's the C. Like, here's the thing. Victor would be the A plot in any other show, right?
Yeah.
Like, that is so compelling that would be the spine of another television show. And in this one, it's a subplot. You know, it's over here.
Yeah.
You might not even talk about it if you're not careful, but good gosh.
Let me give a spoiler that might not be.
Okay.
He, in the game, which is well after the events in the show, he is a straight up hardcore supervillain. Like, he is like the laser on the arm they showed is like bolted onto his body. His body is entirely metal. Straight up supervillain. And he is obsessed with purging flesh and transforming everything to transcendent metal. Now,
so he's like the Borg.
Yes, only science magic Borg thing.
Now, I can't wait to watch that transition happen.
Right, but that's the trick, though, right? Is they've rewritten some other bits of lore for the show. Like there are bits of pre-existing game lore that are now off the table because of the show. And so, what are they going to do with him? Are they going to take him to the fairly mono-dimensional thing that he was when he was first created for the game, or are they going to give him that nuanced treatment? And no one knows.
Oh man, I hope they give him. I hope they still make him a supervillain, but I hope they give him the nuanced treatment, because so far they have, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, had you told me that after, was it episode 7, where he first has the transformation with his leg? Is it 7? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Had you told me that after episode 7? Even after episode 8, because in episode 8 is when the little girl, and again,
Sky, I think,
nuanced character that we barely see. I mean, her total screen time is less than like 1/10 of an episode, you know, for the whole season.
A little monologue about how much she loves him, and
right. Like, yeah, exactly.
Delivered largely posthumously.
Yeah,
right. But she's, you know, we know that she's in love with Victor. We know she's like got these like big dill worshipy eyes behind her glasses. Mm-hmm. And then she comes in to try to talk to him, to solicit something. And like, he kills her, not intentionally, but he kills her.
Yeah.
And like that, had you left it at that, I could easily see, boom, supervillain. But they didn't. They had him reading her notes, realizing that here was the connection that he had been craving, that he'd missed, and it's gone. It's a lost chance. It's gone. And so he backs way off, and you know, tells Jace he has to kill, or he has to destroy the hex core. He almost commits suicide. Like, he pushes for peace. Huh?
Just that's another symmetry, right? Am I interrupting?
Yes.
Yeah, like that when Jace was, after he'd been kicked out of the university, he was sitting at that same keyhole over the bridge, and Victor interrupted him, and now Jace interrupts Victor. I agree with you.
Yeah.
And pardon the interruption, but I think you're absolutely right, Kacey. And furthermore, I love that Victor wants Jace to destroy it. Victor can't destroy it himself, even though it made him commit manslaughter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about like he recognizes his own fatal flaw, but he still can't address it himself.
Right.
He turns to someone else to say, "You destroy it because I can't." And he gets there's so many great lines in this episode. But he gets.
I wrote a bunch down.
Yeah, me too. So when I look to the side, I'm not losing interest. I'm referring to notes. In the pursuit of greatness, we failed to do good.
That's the very first one I have written down.
Yeah.
Great line. Great
I'm
line.
like, I don't want to. I'll save that for the end. But I love that about this show, and I love that Victor's like it is so. I don't think Dennis Miller's one of the greatest minds of our century, but he said something once that really stuck with me on one of his routines. Man is, in the span of 10 seconds, both the most noble and the most depraved creature on the planet.
Yeah.
And this show is really encapsulating that really, really well.
Yeah.
So I did love that about Victor. I didn't want to give him short shrift. I do love that my prediction about, Mel, Hextech, and Piltover and Zahn not being the final stage, that she's not worried about Zahn. She's worried about something else.
Mhm.
I love that bears fruit.
Yep.
Here. Like, not that we don't know if she will eventually take the Hextech or not, although she seems to not want to do so. But I did love that as well. But yeah, no, such good stuff. Does anybody else have any other notes they want to go over before we start getting into the climactic stuff? Because I feel like once we get into the climactic stuff, we're just gonna
Power on through.
It's just fun.
Let's do a build up. Let's talk about what Vi and Jinx and Caitlin went through up to like 9.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because we had like Jinx found out that the people were doing a hunt without her, and that started on this because everyone's trying to protect her, and because they're trying to protect her, she became more and more suspicious that there was things going on, and inserted herself more, and things kept escalating as a result of that.
And she kept getting cut out. And this was something that Joelle pointed out at the beginning that I keep seeing reverberate through. She gets cut out ostensibly to protect her, but it always has disastrous consequences. Nobody's talking to Powder. Nobody's talking to Jinx,
Mm-hmm.
And because she gets caught out, she has trust issues.
She has invisible dead siblings who talk to her instead.
Right.
They don't talk to her until they're dead.
That's right. Yeah, nobody talks to Jinx until they're dead.
Yeah, and that's true. So Kacey and Joelle had a slight disagreement over whether those were completely artificial or remnants of Milo and the other
I
kid.
read them visually as like mannequins with bits of their clothing attached to them.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think that's good stuff too.
The question is whether or not bones were incorporated.
I don't know. It looked like Milo's skull. I'm just gonna say.
Could be.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And the process to heal Jinx, man, that's another one of those brilliant animation segments where they're just using, voice acting, obviously, but like also just the visuals to like, man, that's visceral.
Yeah.
That's real visceral.
The character always had purple eyes in her original art, which she didn't, of course, as Powder or as young Jinx. And so just trivial little shit like that, right? Like and now she has purple eyes after that treatment.
It's a signal. Yeah.
It was a final transformation. And like to think of that and have it be, no, she wasn't born with them. It was a side effect of an event.
Yeah.
It helped make her.
There was another thing that happened in episode 9 that was kind of it's related, at least in my head. But it kind of harkens back to what we talked about in one of the earlier episodes. The one, Justin, I don't remember which one it was, like 5 or 6, where you're like, yeah, and then in the middle there's a Imagine Dragons concert, music video or whatever.
Yeah.
But we talked about how the show's writers and artists and just the storytellers, right? How they would take music in being played like in character and make it into the score of what was going on.
Yeah, to go from diegetic music to exegetic music.
Those are the words. Yeah, I don't know those fancy words, but sorry, I
learned them from what was his name? Never mind. I learned them from YouTube, so don't feel bad.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. But that was another like signal of transformation for me when, and I guess I'm jumping ahead to a different character, but kind of the same thought, right? Is when in episode 9, when Vi walks into what's it called, the last drop, the bar, Vander's bar, for her confrontation with Civica.
Yeah, and the needle drop. Yeah.
And the dude goes in, and like before she even walks in, he goes in and starts this jukebox that we're all very familiar with because it's part of the opening credits, and we've seen it in play at pivotal moments earlier in the show. I loved how they did that, how they took the music and that object of the jukebox and made it such a signal of, this is a turning point. This is a transformation happening. Something big is going on right now,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And that was a good fight too.
It was a brilliant fight. It was brilliant.
I mean, they're all brilliant, but like it was really quite good. And then it hit me on the second watch, actually, like emotionally harder than I would have expected when she hears Vander, when she's on the floor. And I would give a lot to hear my dad's voice again. And I was very, very hit by that. And it played very well. Vi and Caitlin are such a fantastic pair of characters, because they do represent, there's a lot in this show that represents the corruption and old hatreds and the forces of inertia and history that you're fighting against whenever you try to make something better, but that Vi and Caitlin are hope, like in a very real way. And that I thought was really great about the entire show.
It's also an interesting juxtaposition that Vi hears Vander's voice, just like Jinx hears the voices of Milo and the other kid. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Milo and the kid who wasn't annoying, so we don't remember his name. But no, you're right. Sorry, I didn't mean to make light of that. That's true.
No. But it's again, very interesting symmetry. They're both hearing the voices of their dead. The voices of the dead are telling them what to do. And
yeah.
But
with Vi, I didn't think she was crazy, even though I should think she's crazy. She's hearing voices, but I didn't think that.
No, not even a little bit.
Recurring theme, right? Because I mean, in episode 9, before we get to our penultimate, we have Silco sitting under a statue of Vander, having a conversation with him.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there anything so undoing as a daughter?
Not for a dad.
Oh my God. I love my 3 girls so much. And this is where I identify with both Silco and with Mel's mom. Mm-hmm. Like, this is actually something that ties in both to me when she says, I would burn the world to protect this family. And it's like, oh, absolutely. Right. And yes, I'm aware that's not morally correct or consistent with my principles. I still would.
Yep.
And that to me is, it's so powerful. Like you said, Brian, when he's just sitting there sharing a drink with Vander, who he clearly on some level still loves.
Mm-hmm. Because he believes in loyalty.
Yes. Like that it still matters to him, even though go ahead.
that statue exists. The fact that there's a fucking sorry. Oh, it's past 10. Okay, cool. The fact
We're
that
We're at 30 minutes.
there's a statue of Vonder in Silco's Zahn says something all by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that Jinx overhears and misinterprets.
Yes.
So tragic. And
because nobody's talking directly to her.
Yeah. So I do love, I think now we can get into it. So when Jace and Silco meet on those battlements with the cannons overlooking the harbor, and they talk about what unified us in the first place, foreign threat. And they're wheeling and dealing, and Jace will do almost anything for peace, but he needs Jinx, like you said earlier, Kacey. And I'm like, oh man, the writing behind that. Like, to set up a realistic tragedy where no one's acting like a moron. You know, everyone is doing what's understandable to their character as best they can.
Yes.
You know, and Jace is embracing peace. He's eschewing vengeance, except for he needs one person to bring to justice.
And he thinks he's giving so much, and yet
he is.
And he has
He
no
is giving
idea
so
how
much.
much.
And he even persuades the council, you know, through force of will. He even persuades the jaded politicians that this is the best course of action, that you have peace right within your grasp.
Can you guys read that?
What could have been?
Yeah.
That was the last line of the song.
Yeah. And I love too, like, so, you know, we see, hearkening back to the Madaras for a second in Noxus, we see her method of brutally, you know, the Romans create a desert and call it peace, not to reference a book that three of us will be writing in soon in that setting. I'll explain that reference later. Anyway, so the Romans create a desert and call it peace, you know, the functional brutality of getting the job done, versus Jace embracing peace and saying to Silco, we can't make a deal with a snake and then cut off its head.
Right.
You know, and that those are your issues, right? If you're going to play at imperialism, you either need to rule with an iron fist, or you need to figure out which snake you're backing.
That's right. Well, and it's interesting because when they have that conversation, and Jace is like, "We need Jinx," and you can tell Silco's like, he masks it in his sneering sociopathy, but he's like, I'm surprised you don't want me, you know, which in Silco speak means, fuck no, you can't have my daughter, but take me instead. This is important. You can take me. And Jace is like, no, we need her. Yeah, because he doesn't understand.
Well, and he does understand if it's going to work, he needs Silco in place because he's the power structure.
Right.
You know, there's not an electorate in Zahn. There's Silco.
Right. And Silco, again, now he's hoist on his own petard because he has nothing else he can offer.
Yeah. So powerful. And then I will, on another craft note, they had me going with when Jinx brings out the platter.
Oh,
they had me going, guys. Like, brethren, sisterin. Like, they had me for a second. I was like, oh, good, you didn't. Like, because I feel like it would have been too much had they done it.
Yeah.
But the fact that they had me going was good.
Well, and they knew that they were going to have everyone going because they have Jinx say to Vi, but really to us, I'm not that crazy. Like, I'm not that crazy. You know?
Yeah. They got me. I don't know if they got you, but they got me.
And they mirrored it because Jinx, not that she necessarily could have delivered it, Jinx offered to Vi everything she wants, getting powder back, but at a cost that might have been too high.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. It wasn't another moment of symmetry.
Yeah. Well, and I like to think too that like Vi has such a good moral center that it doesn't actually matter that it's Caitlyn, that Vi would not condone murder, even for the sake of her sister. You know, Vi still has, enough moral center to her. Now it is Caitlyn, so the personal stakes are higher, because you don't get a this is a note I had for episode 8. You don't get a sad walk away in the rain scene with someone who's just your friend.
Right.
So they're clearly implying that's a deeper relationship.
Yeah.
Or at least not that friendship can't be extremely deep. That's a different sort of relationship.
Yeah.
But that, like, I do think that the Jinx / Patter is asking too much of Vi in that moment. As a matter of foreshadowing and proper setup, I do like that the power Jinx has, the super speed Jinx has to avoid being shot with her own Gatling gun is set up by the procedure and her new purple eyes. So I think that's cool too. And yeah, that whole sequence where she's on the edge, Silco's making a play for her conscience, Vi's making a play for her conscience, and everything hinges around her. Oh, such good drama. Such good drama. And then, like, Silco insisting unto his deathbed, not deathbed, but like, I never would have given you to them.
You're perfect.
Don't cry.
You're perfect.
You're perfect.
Well, and again, that's the real tragedy, right? Because all she really wants is someone to love her and accept her as she is. And he does.
And she killed the only person who does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she doesn't realize that he does until he's already dead. He just, with his last breath, he says, "You're perfect."
And that's, sorry, go ahead.
And that's it. She's like, that's, I think, what makes her realize that, like, I can't be, I can't be what she wants me to be. She wants me to be something other than what I am. Mm-hmm. And I need someone to love me for who I am.
Yeah. Well, and I think that moment with his dying words is our final assurance that Silco meant every word of it, right?
He absolutely loved her. Yeah.
Yeah. That like, there's always this, because he's such a cynical, manipulative, cold-blooded, calculated character, that maybe it's Machiavellian and maybe his ambitions matter more, but no, they don't.
Yeah.
In the end, he loved her more than he loved his own ambition.
Yep. But he just couched it in sociopathy.
Yeah.
I was thinking too, when this is a note from earlier, but when he's drinking with Vander, so to speak, at the fountain, it was almost a proper Shakespearean monologue. I feel like when he's talking to himself there, that it's like, this would fit in with King Lear.
Complete with someone behind the Aris.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
God, so good. And then as Jace is securing peace, like as he's winning and bringing Piltover and Zahn to a new era, that hope dies with Silco.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like,
because the head of the snake was cut off.
Yeah. So good. So freaking good. It's been a long time since I had a show affect me that much. I guess that's kind of why I didn't want to get this too early, because it is such a powerful, resonant ending that ties up so much. But I'll open the floor up for final thoughts at this point. I don't think this is the last Arcane content we're going to do by any means. I feel like we'll probably do some more deep dive with lore. I know season 2 is coming, and we're going to want to reconvene for that as well. But guys, final thoughts on Arcane season 1.
The imagery of that shot as you watch these beautiful horizons with the light streaking across, and we don't actually see explosions, death, carnage, which we've certainly seen all through the season. But for that shot, we see, and there's just so much dread with just little flashes. It's just amazing that they can pull it off.
Yeah.
I have no idea how Jace is going to live.
Yeah. Well, and okay, if they
is he a character in the game?
Console,
yeah.
Then who's gonna be able to report back that they were almost gonna have peace? Will they even know? Are we gonna have all new characters? What? How much of a smoking ruin is Piltover gonna be?
Well, and it's such a good illustration of Donald Kagan argues persuasively, to my mind, that war is the natural state of mankind, and that anytime you have a even somewhat prolonged period of peace, it's the result of great effort by people. And I feel like this show does such a good job of displaying how fragile that is.
Yeah.
That Jace tries as hard as he can for peace, that Mel turns her back on her upbringing and all of her instincts and backs his play for peace, despite what her entire life up to that moment has told her to do. You know, all these beautiful moments, just one decision turns it all into ash.
Yeah.
And I think I love that all the more because I feel like the show thematically is not saying that it was wrong to try or wrong to hope. I feel like this is, in my opinion, and if you're a Game of Thrones fan, I'm sorry. In my opinion, Games of Thrones is an amoral show. It crosses the line into indicating that it's foolish to try to be good.
Right.
I feel like Arcane is the apex meeting point of morality and realism in human nature and morality. That it's, you can try your absolute best and it may come to ash, and you should anyway.
Well, and that's one of the,
love that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the, this is not fully a noir show, but there is a lot of noir like elements going on. And I think that's one of them, you know. Yeah. Doing the right thing doesn't always work out. Do the right thing anyway.
Yeah. And not even for you personally, like, because I feel like there are a lot of people who are brave enough to brave personal consequences to do the right thing.
Sure.
But that when you enter a world of moral complexity, when your decisions have consequences, no matter what you do, one of the lines I didn't cover yet, but when, you know, Jace is properly torn up about the child who died in the raid on the factory, and Vi tells him, one dead kid, there are hundreds more like him.
Yep.
And you're just now facing it. So anything you do, including nothing, is a choice.
Yep.
You know, and I really appreciate that about the show. And it's incredibly powerful. And I didn't give a shit about League of Legends before Arcane.
Yeah.
I had no attachment to this. I had no expectations that this would reach this high of an art form. But good Lord, it has.
Yeah. I'm interested to know what Brian thinks we're going to see in season 2, based on what you know of the lore.
Good question. They obviously set up Noxus as a big deal. Noxus is about to undergo a civil war. The guy who is running and leading the city is straight up possessed by a demon. And
you should get that checked out.
Well, the general of his army, who is deposed, rises up, figures out what's going on, and conquers the demon, and then takes over the city. But doing so causes all kinds of repercussions and like, as any time when there's massive regime change in a very warlike nation, like wars spring up everywhere as everyone kind of goes off for their own until power is reconsolidated.
Right.
So that is the so far canonical lore about what's going to happen in the Noxus side of the world. And it's set up beautifully for that to ripple into Piltover. What story to tell with it, though? They've changed the lore enough they can go any direction.
Sure. So have the game developers made a statement about the canonical, is that how you say that? Canonical standing of Arcane the story?
Actually, no. Like,
that's probably smart. Honestly.
So the writing team is internal, right? It is Riot devs who are writing it.
Okay.
So
God bless them. Like they should write more because they're good.
well, when you have as much money as they do, they have been hiring professional game writers. And something to talk about is, there's very few people who are quality fiction writers who can make the crossover and understand what it means to write in and for games. And Riot's not actually there yet. Riot has, these are screenplay writers at this point, right? That are working. They haven't yet actually gotten to the point that they're working on it, RPG style stuff where there is an interactive world to explore, and it is uncertain if their writing staff is up to that task yet. To be determined.
Gotcha. Well, and how big of a world? Because I don't feel, and maybe you could point me in a different direction, but I feel like the best RPG writing with the strongest stories may have been fairly expansive, but they sacrifice something. So, like, I'm going to throw out it because it's my favorite game. I'm going to throw out Witcher 3 as an example of, like, that's a great story. You're limited to one main character. You don't get to choose. You don't create your own character. You get Geralt of Rivia, and you follow him through. Now your Geralt ends up in a different place than my Geralt, but they start the same character. So I don't know how to do like good, for instance, MMO writing. Like, I don't know how you would do that in a way that would be as impactful as something like Arcane. I'm not saying you can't write a good MMO. Clearly, people have made billions of dollars off of that, but
man, there's so many interesting techniques. So, like, if we're willing to get in off of Arcane directly and talk about that sort of thing, a game that occupies 2 whole shelves of my thing up there is Vampire. In the game of Vampire, you get to play characters that are literally immortal. Well,
I was a Ventru. I know it's kind of basic.
Well, how do you preserve secrets and mystery in a setting when you have people who have been alive since the beginning? And you can just go up to and ask. And the way they solve this in their writing, I think, is really, really clever. They set up so you can go up and ask, and you'll get clear, definitive answers from an unimpeachable source. But other people ask a different unimpeachable source, and they get a different, clear, unimpeachable answer because
reality.
Memory fucks with you, because people lie, because people have agendas. And so what this also does, which is really important, is it sets up room for argument among the fan base. Who's telling the truth? Who's lying about which detail? And that's sort of place where, like, it invites basically fan fiction to be a part of it as everyone tries to figure out what's the real story between the lines of the published story.
And and that's very interesting. That's a very interesting thought here, because if you look at it, Arcane, who are the possible sources for this knowledge, for this story, if we're taking it RPG style, right? Who survived? Well, Vi, Jinx, Caitlyn, maybe Jace. We're pretty sure Jace makes it because he shows up in the game later.
Yep.
Echo and Heimerdinger.
Jinx is going to survive everything, but she will always be unreliable.
Yes.
But that's what I'm saying. Every single one of these is an unreliable narrator. Yeah. Every single one of them. And that was another thing that they set up so well in the show, is that everyone has motive. Everyone has bias. You can't not, right? Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting. I think that's very cool. That's very interesting that they haven't commented on like you said, the canonical standing of the show, because who knows what's the truth, right?
I think they're still trying to work it out, to be honest. But we'll see when season 2 comes out.
I hope that they are smart enough to do what I'm suggesting that they're doing.
Legit.
So interesting, what they could do as a fun little light note to end us on is, so I've been reading up on BattleTech for reasons. I just recently got the game and I've been playing with the kids. It's pretty fun, a bit crunchy, but fun. the new Catalyst Games version, which is pretty close to original BattleTech, really. There you go. And what they did is little known fact, there was a cartoon of BattleTech that came out in the 90s. It's not terribly good, but it's not as bad as you might think. And what they did is the cartoon is not canon, except it is canon because it was a show in the BattleTech universe. Like, they're like, no, the show didn't happen, but the show happened.
Yeah.
Like, universe, like children of House Davion watched the BattleTech cartoon growing up. So the events didn't happen, but they were fictionally depicted the way they're fictionally depicted.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's another device that I think is very clever that I love when storytellers use, especially with these huge properties, these huge, shared world types of situations. So
absolutely. So we're closing in on an hour. Punchy last thoughts, anyone? We'll go from Brian around to Kacey. Brian.
We've talked a bunch about synergies and about different sides of it. And I was thinking earlier, it's interesting that everything is that way. Hex tech is that way. We've seen good and bad uses of it. Magic's that way. We saw the beautiful exposition of the teleport and the horrible, like everything dying from the hex core. And I think whatever we see next season is going to have that beautiful sides and horrible sides.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Joelle.
For season 2, I'm hoping that we see a redemption arc for Powder trying to reemerge from Jinx. I think they could do a fantastic job with that, and I would love to see it.
I think it's what we all want. I'm not sure I'm going to hold my breath for it.
It might be completely impossible, but that's the dream.
Or it could be a tragedy that she fails.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kacey.
For season 2, you know what? I'm still Team Jinx. Still Team Jinx, man.
Blue hair power.
Yeah, blue hair power. That's right. I almost argue she doesn't need a redemption arc. She is who she is, and she's recognized that she can't rely on someone else to love her. And that is a powerful realization.
So far we have true neutral, lawful good, and chaotic neutral.
I mean, I typically, yeah, I don't know, maybe I typically identify as chaotic good, but the T-shirt that I want says chaotic good, doing the right thing, even if it means killing every motherfucker in the room.
Yeah. So my wife jokes that I'm good evil. I do the right thing in the most uncomfortable way possible. So anyway, yeah, I don't even know what I want for season 2. I just can't wait to see what they give me.
Yeah,
is where I'm at. So, gosh, guys, great conversation.
Oh, I have one other thought. The brilliance. Okay. The brilliance. I'm chaotic neutral. What do you want?
Go ahead, Case.
The brilliance in this show lies not entirely in the writing or the characterization or the voice acting or the visuals or the music. The brilliance of this show is in the way that all of those elements come together. And I really hope that season 2 continues that trend.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great closing thought, Kacey. Thank you. That is all the time we have for the Lore and Valor podcast today. Please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving us a comment if you've enjoyed our conversation, or a 5-star review on your podcast venue of choice. We're on most of them. I hope to see. Oh, I almost forgot. Kacey, what's out now? What's out next? And what do you want to tell people about?
No Game for Knights is if you liked Arcane, you like that noir, like
welcome to the BAEN Civil War.
If you liked Arcane and you like that sort of noirish, you're definitely going to love No Game for Knights. It is a anthology of noir short stories, science fiction and fantasy noir short stories, edited by myself and Larry Correa. And they are so freaking good, you guys. So freaking good. And we're currently going up against the Chicks in Tank Tops and World's Long Lost anthologies for that #1 spot on Amazon. So come out and support your local Grey Knight.
Both of them BAEN anthologies.
All three.
Yeah.
All three. Sorry. All three are BAEN anthologies. Speaking of which, Joelle, what do you have coming out now? And what are you excited to tell the people about?
I'm in witness protection is because I'm hiding from several #1 New York Times bestselling authors who might
Including
be
Kacey.
on Twitter. But I did want to give a shout out to the Valkyrie Initiative, which Kacey and I
I'm
are
in that
both
one too.
which is not in competition for the #1 new release science fiction anthology because it is fantasy.
Yep.
But
Very nice. Very nice.
you can
Links to all
definitely
those.
still buy.
Nice. I'm going to give Brian a chance too, but links to all those will be in the description below to all three of those anthologies. I have started using affiliate links, so disclaimer, like there is a small commission involved for me. No increase in price to you if you click on the link. Brian, what have you been working on lately?
Nothing on any best-selling list.
I'm sorry, what?
Well, sorry, not sorry. I'm not on a book best-selling list.
Okay, yeah, be real here, bro.
But Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 comes out on October 28th, and it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, my podcast will totally make such a difference in sales.
We should do a launch event, like the 4 of us. For Brian's,
Would that be funny or pretentious? I'm not sure.
It would be adorable.
Adorable and humiliating for me. I am so bad at my own game. Oh my God. Larry will mock me forever.
Oh gosh, guys, this is so much fun. Thank you for joining me again. And thank you for watching. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast venue of choice. I will see you next time. And until then, keep up the fire.